Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. There we go. Thank you for joining us tonight on the final installment of Night with the Experts for 2025. I'm Dave Kraft, Director of Nuclear Energy Information Service, and we're based in Chicago. And we do this every month, last Thursday of each month, with the exception of December, as I'll get to in a minute. 7 o'clock Central Time. And it's open to the public. There's no charge. We invite you to invite guests if you like. And the purpose of this is to bring guests, speakers who are experts in the nuclear field to you so that you have an opportunity to ask them questions, get into some dialogue. They'll give a short presentation, and then you folks get to participate by asking questions. As I mentioned, this is our last event of this year. So the next Night with the Experts will be on Thursday, January 29th, I believe it is, 7 o'clock Central Time. And next year, we're going to be doing something a little bit different than we've done this year. We've decided we're going to do a several series of themes. So you'll have 2 or 3 events in a row, which are very similarly themed. And the experts will kind of build on each other's information and reputation. So we'll have announcements about that going out in December. So tonight, we are really lucky to have a veteran with us, a person who has been through the wars for 50 years, an author. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and co-host tonight, Bob Cruteau, who's a member of the NEIS board, and to Jan Budart, who's also a member of the board, and introduce Ace Hoffman. So, well, we're ready to go.
Okay, I guess, Jen, go ahead.
I keep forgetting that I'm not well heard, so I don't want to say anything because apparently there's something wrong with
Okay,
this
we're having
microphone. So
some technical
yes,
difficulties on Jan's end. So Ace has been a member of this movement for decades. He's a writer, a researcher, and he's going to share experiences over the last 40 to 50 years in the nuclear trenches with you. And we'll invite your questions and discussion after. So Ace, we'll turn it directly over to you and get going. By the
Okay,
way,
well,
this is being recorded tonight. If you do not wish to have your face appearing in the recording, make sure you turn your camera off when we come to question and answer. And the chat is currently closed. We will open it up when it becomes time for the question and answer segment. All right, sorry. All right.
okay. Uh, I'm Ace Hoffman, and I'm 69 years old. And I can't remember when I started fighting nuclear power, but it was probably around 14 or something like that. So 50 years is a fairly good estimate because by 1979, I thought I knew enough to do a comedy routine about 3 Mile Island when it happened. And I probably already knew John Goffman pretty well by then, who was, of course, a Manhattan Project scientist and one of the founders, really, of the, and I don't want to use this term, anti-nuclear movement. I want to change it to the pro-DNA movement. But anyway, we're going to have to go back and forth between those terms. So I had this comedy routine, and it was made of cut-ins of Beatles songs. I think there were 17 of them or something. I forget exactly. And I happened to be taking a class from a music teacher or a music ed business teacher at the time. So I brought it to him and I said, "Can I release this?" And he listened to it and he clapped out one of the sequences, which started out yesterday. All my troubles seem so far. Well, you know the song. And he clapped it out and said, "No, you're good. You don't have to get permission or anything like that." He was the producer of the Five Satins and the Still of the Night, one of the most popular songs of the 50s. In fact, I think it's the most popular song of the 50s. So I brought it to a lawyer for the industry and then decided, no, I better just get this out before it's over, and sent it to Dr. Demento. It made it onto his Funny Five and was played, all over the Pacifica stations and so forth. We're playing it. So I have a long history of working. Why was I talking to Dr. Goffman? Yeah, they're almost the same. I was talking to Dr. Goffman because I had read a lot about nuclear power already by then, and I was at a rally of some sort, and I actually just went up to him and said, "I've been writing about nuclear power, and would you read some of my stuff?" And he said yes, and we had a 20, 25, 30-year relationship with a lot of letters going back and forth. Um, Another one would be Carl Z. Morgan. He founded the Health Physics Society and was very opposed to the way the Physics Society apologizes now for nuclear uh, poison. And I can't remember how I met him, but we talked on the phone quite a number of times, and he was very upset with the way the industry was working. And now the next one, the next Manhattan Project scientist that I got to know was Marion Falk, who was Lawrence Livermore Laboratories tritium expert. And when they had a tritium spill, he was called back in because he was so much their expert. And I can't remember how I got to know him. I can't remember who made the connection. But the reason I got to know him was because Dr. Helen Caldecott, who I also have known for 30 years or so, told me to learn everything I could about tritium. So I went to Cadre and learned what I could from her. And then it might have been her, but somebody sent me to Dr. Falk. And he and I spent a long time together. We spent hours and hours talking about tritium. So I think later on, I want to say some of the things that he taught me. But his main problem was that people didn't understand just how powerful a low energy beta release really is. So we started talking about how you would express it, and this ended up being an electromagnetic wave spectrum, which of course is a logarithmic scale that you've all seen many of. And most of them only have two layers. They have the wavelength and the time that it takes, but they don't have the energy levels. So he had me do a electromagnetic wave spectrum with all three rows. And that bottom row shows some very interesting things. It shows that chemical bonds are at one point on it, and you go up 3 orders of magnitude, and that's when you get to this so-called low energy beta release. You go up another three levels of magnitude, and you'll get to an alpha release. And you go up another 3 levels or so, and you get to a plutonium fission reaction, which is full of energy. So these are the kinds of people that I would be working with. And in the meantime, I'm developing software because when I quit college, sorry, see, I'm not an expert in anything. So we're ending this meeting on something a little different, except maybe computers. So I got out of college and I started taking all kinds of different jobs, dishwashing for starters. I'm real good at that. But a friend of mine got me a job in Norwalk in a hospital at the medical records, working at night all alone. Then I got a job at a high-life fronton. You have to be bonded to work in a high-life fronton. I was a cameraman for the fastest sport in the world. It's a wonderful job. I should never have left. Then I got a job working for a vending company, which is, I had to take coins out. One of our customers was the police department of a local city, and the locker room there. So I probably had to be bonded for that job too. I'm getting somewhere with this. So I call my boss up and I say, "You're not going to believe this, but the police, the candy machine in the locker room is all beat up." He started laughing. He said, "Yeah, they do that. They got those billy clubs, and if they don't get their candy, they beat up the machine." Well, I thought that was kind of relevant in today's world. Anyway, it's another trust job, right? So I decide nothing's working, and I sold spices, and I did this and the other thing, construction. I find an ad for a computer school. I go to computer school for 6 months. And when I get out, because I had all these trusted jobs, they were able to get me a job at a bank, which is, supposedly you can just steal a nickel from everybody or a penny or a fraction of a penny from everybody and get rich. I did not get rich, but I did get to work with a lot of ex-military programmers. So there's another trust job. That's a very high level trust job. But eventually they got bought by another bank and I left. And so I started working, hanging out in an IBM product store, which is something that existed just when the IBM PCs first came out. And somebody came in and wanted a tutorial about the human heart. And so I said, well, come back in 2 weeks and I'll see what I can show you. So in BASIC, I showed him a beating heart written on an IBM PC. This is like 1984. And he gave me the contract. And I said, but I have to own the tool, okay? But I'm going to have to write it in assembler language because this is not very good. This is not smooth. So I spent the next couple of years writing this assembler language tool that could do a beating heart and an EKG and the electrical flow through the heart all at the same time, all written in assembler language. And I was at a trade show one time, and somebody, Brooke Shields, walked by and didn't even see my booth. But somebody else walked by, so I was very disappointed, and said, "That is really cool. Would you like to do lasers?" I said, yeah, that sounds fun. He said, it wouldn't be for any money or anything, but come by my shop next week. And that resulted in doing a laser light show for the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra with Eric Kunzel, America's greatest conductor, conducting in Niagara Falls. A couple of months later, he wanted the source code, but I wouldn't give it to him. A couple of months later, a company called me up and said, we'd like to buy your source code. I said, source code is not for sale. And they said, well, come talk to us anyway. So I go down to talk to them, and they really only wanted the source code. And I'm like, well, can't you just use the tool that I sell? So everybody's buying the tool. I sold hundreds of the tool for developing animated educational tutorials, right? And they're like, no, our contract with the government requires us to buy your source code. I'm like, my source code? He says, yeah, your source code. A couple of years later, I'm watching TV, CNN, and they say, the Air Force has new equipment. They've got a heads-up display for their F-16s. Wow, that's cool. I can't wait to see it. The instant I saw it, I recognized my software. Okay, it's the F-16s. The reason for the lasers was because it's used to control the lasers on the F-16s. I never saw it again until a couple of months ago when in Ukraine, they were shooting down a F-16 again, shooting down a drone. By golly, that's my software. They're still using it. Well, I got 45 years in the software business, and my wife here has 45 years in the business. And she mentioned, if something works, you don't change it. So it's kind of interesting to think that my software is used by the most deadliest weapon in the world. It's used by 28 countries now. But the point I'm trying to make is that the government obviously has to trust me. They have to. They have no choice. Nobody can go through 100 lines, 1,000 lines of code, assembler language code, and figure it out. So there's got to be trust there. The government had to trust John Hoffman because John Hoffman had isolated the plutonium for the Nagasaki bomb with Glenn Seaborg. They had to trust Marion Falk. He had isolated the tritium for the nuclear triggers. Speaking of which, one of my customers was builds the nuclear triggers for. I don't know if they use my software for the nuclear triggers, but they were a customer of mine. So if you want to make progress as an activist, it's not going to be because you know something that they don't know. They already know. They know how dangerous the reactors are. They know how likely they are to have accidents. And here's what I'm getting to about that. After 9/11, San Onofre had a meeting, their annual meeting. It just happened to have come within about 3 weeks of 9/11. And we had more people at that meeting than I've ever seen at a nuclear hearing. Well over 100, and cameras everywhere. And for the first time, the NRC had lots of representatives there, and they all wanted to talk to me. I had like 6 NRC guys surrounding me until the meeting started. It wasn't until later, years later, that I finally figured out it was because they didn't want me talking to the cameras. They didn't want me talking to the news. And that's my advice to any activists. If you have a choice of talking to a government official or talking to a reporter, talk to the reporter. If you have any chance at all, talk to the reporter. Don't make the mistake I made. Because what I was going to say that they didn't want anybody saying was, these plants are not protected against airplane strikes. They are absolutely not. And of course, there's, at some level, it's pretty easy to see I've got a lot of credibility on a statement like that with the tutorials that I've written and the people that I've known and the people I've talked to, you know, the Goffmans and the Folks and so on and so forth. And also, you know, all the industrial work I've done as a programmer. So I was basically blocked from making an incredibly vital point that might have changed the world. Just be careful. Don't let that happen to you. And let's see, where does that bring me? Sharon?
Tritium?
Well, I did want to talk about tritium. So let me, there was another story I wanted to mention that sort of related to that. I went and talked up in Fresno one time to a small group of activists, and just for the fun of it, I don't know, to mess with people's heads, I guess. I don't know. I said I wanted to aim a laser at the domes, at the San Onofre domes, with a big no nukes symbol. That I have done work like that, and because I had galloping horses and flying eagles, this was not your usual laser light show that I was doing. Okay, this was we had complete control of the laser. Well, it turned out when I was in Fresno that they had a bug in the room I think it was a church or something where we were, and they had somebody was investigating the group. And I think he got really upset and you know, called the NRC and said, this guy wants to aim lasers at your and the NRC probably just said, oh, him, big deal. But what happened that I thought was really kind of funny was about a month later, the local paper had a full-page article about something else I had talked about very specifically just for the fun of it at the same meeting, which is, why is there all this bird poop on one of the domes and not on the other dome? Now, nobody ever has talked about that before, ever. But a month after I talked about it in Fresno and mentioned the lasers, there's a full-page article in the paper about people are asking, why is there all this white on top of one of the domes and not on top of the other? They never asked a single, what do they call them, ornithologists, bird watchers? They didn't ask any of them. It was just an article about it. It was as if they were reminding me that they're watching me. Okay, fine. So they're watching me. So what's the point of that? Hi, CIA. Nice to see you. Okay, I'm done. What about tritium? What I've not seen, I read Arjun Makhijani's book on tritium, and it was wonderful. And of course, Mary Olson knows a lot about tritium and the dangers. And most of that is about the tritium. But one of the things that Marion Folk wanted me to emphasize was when the tritium is usually going to be attached to a water molecule inside your body. So it's a HTO, with one hydrogen molecule or atom, one tritium atom, which is hydrogen, but with 2 neutrons, and one oxygen molecule. And when the tritium atom decays, the helium atom that becomes that nucleus becomes, how does it work? Well, anyway, it goes shooting off in the opposite direction, and that does a lot of damage. And the HO molecule that's left after this happens is extremely reactive and goes all over the place, grabbing an electron, and then that whatever grabbed an electron from loses, has to grab an electron from something else, and it goes down an incredibly long chain of uh, uh, of of messing up your body, basically. So I didn't see that part of it mentioned in Arjun's book, so I wanted to just mention that's the kind of thing that I try to learn. One other story. Do I have time for one more, or should we go straight to questions?
I think there's a little bit more time. And let me ask you this, Ace, if you could, like what brought you specifically into the nuclear power issue and some of the things you've done over the years in that? And then we'll go into questions from there.
Yeah, it certainly started with nuclear weapons and being opposed to nuclear weapons. And I can be changed by one sentence. So I may have read one sentence by John Hoffman that said nuclear power plants release 1,000 curies of tritium every year, something, or they produce as the same garbage, the same waste that a bomb produces, but in vastly larger quantities, and they're supposed to be contained. Any one of those phrases would have got me from worrying about the bomb to worrying about nuclear energy. So I was certainly worrying about nuclear energy by 1979. I had already spent quite a bit of time. I mean, you can tell that from the jokes in my comedy routine, which is called 3 Mile Island Beatles. And yeah, they never got hold of me either. I'm sure they heard it. Although at first I thought, well, they just must never have heard it because I've never got any stop or anything. I'm sure they heard it when Michael Jackson bought the contract. There must have been something in there that said they weren't going to touch me. There had to be, because I've posted it on YouTube. And earlier this year, I did a comedy tape of Tom Lehrer's The Elements, where he runs through all the elements. Well, I had done an interactive animated periodic table, so I animated one to Tom Lehrer's thing. Now, Tom Lehrer has already given all of everything away, so you don't have to ask for permission. He's since passed away. But within 24 hours, it got a takedown anyway. So if it was possible to take down my Beatles thing, I'm sure it would have happened. And I wrote a letter and saying, no, you can't take it down. It's in the public domain, according to Tom Lehrer. And the takedown was removed, and it's now had close to 600 views. So that's how did I get into nuclear? I will say this. My wife and I visited Connecticut Yankee. That's how long ago. And we've been in California since 1992. She wrote them a letter and said she was interested in studying nuclear energy or something like that. And could we have a tour? So we got a tour. And I have a little black box. I'll show you if I can find it, that they gave me while we were on the tour. Here it is. Little black box. Okay. I call it my little black box, and actually wrote a little song to go with it. So I'm not going to try to sing for you because it might break the speakers. But that's the amount of waste that a family will create in such and such amount of time, 25 years or 20 years or something like that. And obviously, we've still got the waste and nobody knows what to do with it, which is, to me, the biggest problem. So I guess that's about it. Oh, yeah, the one other story. Why did I change my name? Well, I want to tell you how to survive a attempted suicidal driver who's going to have a head-on collision, wants to have a head-on collision with you. Now, I didn't magically know how to do this. 2 months before it happened, I was watching a local TV station, a local driving instructor in my city, Carlsbad, and he says, this is not very likely to happen, but it happened to my uncle, and I'm going to tell you how to survive it. Well, it took me 2 months after it happened to remember that that's how I learned how to do it. But it happened. And I elbowed Sharon. I said, look at that guy. He had looked like he was trying to flip his car about 1,000 feet in front of me. And then he straightened out right in my lane. And I go, oh, is that what we're going to do? And what you have to do is you need to slow down immediately as much as you can and wait. And he's going to pick up speed coming at you. And when he gets close enough, you pick up speed, and then you have maneuverability and he doesn't. So I had maneuverability. I waited. Put it in second gear out of standard. I waited until the last possible moment. I left it in second gear so that he wouldn't see me shifting, so he wouldn't realize I'd started to move. And at the last moment, I turned to the left, to his side, because there were 3 lanes, a middle lane and 2 other lanes on his side, and only 1 lane for me on the right-hand side. And at the last minute, I backed off a little bit so that he could hit the car, because otherwise I figured he's just going to hit the guy behind me. So he hit the car. I could see him turning into me. And then the cops wouldn't come. I didn't understand it. Why wouldn't the cops come? They never came. They finally, an hour later, they came and yelling at me for leaving the car in the middle of the road. But I wanted them to see, I called 911 and everything. Well, that was Friday after Thanksgiving. Monday, I see my congressman resigning from Congress, Randall Cunningham. That's when I recognized him. So if you want to speak truth to power, try writing a letter to a judge accusing your congressman of attempted manslaughter of you and your wife, and see how it goes. It went fine for me. Nothing happened because I was speaking the truth. I knew it was my congressman, but I couldn't get any action on it. So that's how you survive that kind of an accident. It's not very likely to happen. Good luck if it does. I've certainly read about a lot that didn't work out since then.
So Ace, I have one other question for you.
Okay.
Before we get into the formal back and forth. You wrote a book, and I thought you could spend a little time explaining what it is, the title, and how it came about, and how people can get it. So,
okay, it's free. First of all, you can download a PDF in 3.
Give them the title.
It's called The Code Killers, because we're talking about the DNA. And as I said, I think we should call ourselves pro-DNA instead of anti-nuclear. I had bladder cancer about 20 years ago. And so afterwards, you kind of think, well, what am I going to do with all this knowledge I've got? And so I decided to create a document. And it started out as posters. And then I realized that what it would really be good for is a reference book when you go to a nuclear hearing. We used to have to get sworn in at hearings. We don't anymore. So now they can lie. But if you have my book, you can look things up. And that's why it's in a graphical format, so that you can kind of remember what page something was on and what it looked like, to try and find stuff really quick. Just finding stuff in a book of just text would be very difficult. So that's why it's in a graphical format. Plus, a lot of the graphics were taken from stuff I had already done, like the periodic table and so forth. And then a lot of them are just colorized from pro-nuclear books that I've got in my collection, because who's going to argue with me whether the information is right or not if I got it from their own sources? But it's at my website, acehoffman.org. And I also have a blog at Google, so that's acehoffman.blogspot.com. And it's, I think, about 1,000 views a week. But I don't know if those are AI or whatever. Nobody ever talks to me or asks me any questions about it. But, like this week, it's mostly Singapore. Last week, it was mostly China. The week before that, it was mostly Brazil. Fortunately, America comes up fairly right.
Okay, thank you. I'll mention that we will include a link to that book in the chat. And at the end of tonight's session, we always send the chat around to the people who participate. So you'll have an active link if you want to take a look at the book or perhaps download it. So thanks for the background. And now we're going to shift gears a little bit and go to the second part of the program. And this is where you get a chance to interact by asking questions or getting into discussion or dialogue with our guest, Ace, and also amongst yourselves as well. We are not shy about having cross conversation. And my colleague and friend Bob Croteau, who is also the NEIS board president, is going to moderate the next section. So he'll be calling on people. We ask that you use a tool. If you look at your screen, there should be a symbol somewhere, either at the bottom or at the top, that says React. And if you click that, you will be able to click a button that says raise hand. And that's how we're going to keep track of who wants to ask a question or make a statement. And we'll take people in the order that they come. Again, a reminder, we are taping this tonight. So if you don't want to appear on the tape, then make sure you turn your camera off before you ask your question. So, Bob, I guess I will turn it over to you, and we'll start with any of the comments or questions that any of our people tonight might have. Bob, you ready?
Okay, I might point out sometimes you have to hover with the cursor at the bottom of the screen for it to even appear, the bar to appear. And the React is the heart-shaped one at the bottom. Then you can go up to raise your hand to indicate that you want to ask a question. And so and raising your hand puts you on the screen as well. But go ahead and let me know whether or not you are interested in asking a question. And you basically, the questions, if you have maximum of 5 minutes to ask a question. If it's just a comment, just 3 minutes, please. And you do get a follow-up question. If you have more, then just wait till everybody's had a chance to talk, and we'll move along as best we can there. So I am going to see if we have any. Okay, Roger Johnson, if you would go ahead and you're unmuted. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, Ace, I'm sorry I missed the very beginning of your program, but I think one of the big issues in all of this is AI. And I'd like to hear your comments on that. And I think the nuclear renaissance and AI are closely intertwined, and that's very disturbing because that's a monolith that's going to document, I think, everything that's going to go on for the next few decades.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the top things on our list right now because so many we have what the 3 reactors that they want to reopen, and usually they're using AI as the excuse. And it's kind of funny. I read that article in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists that Bart sent around today, and they go back and forth between we're going to use this energy to keep the grid up to this is going to be exclusively for AI to beat the Chinese at being first. We want to be first at AI. I remember I got between my wife and I, we have more years in the computer business than there are years in the computer business. And my software is used without a military connection. It's used by hundreds of or thousands of universities and so forth, or was 30 years ago, whatever. I don't really distribute it the same way anymore, so I don't know where it goes now. AI is incredibly dangerous. It makes mistakes. It makes hallucinations. It has no morals. It has no empathy. The closer it gets to these things, it's not ever going to be there. Certainly not in our lifetime. If we get to quantum computing, everything they're trying to build now will be a complete waste of money because quantum computers, if they ever work, are going to be 1,000,000 times faster than what we have. And what we have is 1,000,000 times faster than what I was programming in 1984. And yet my software is still being used because you can speed up the computers, but if you have something written in a similar language to work on those computers, it's still going to be the fastest. So I don't see AI doing any significant good. And it blows my mind that they're giving Microsoft $1 billion to help them restart TMI when Microsoft has billions and billions and billions. Why would they have to give them any money? And that goes for all of these companies. Why are they getting government grants? It can't possibly be effective. So, okay, next question.
Yes, thank you. We have Connie Klein as our next questionnaire. Go ahead, Connie, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi everyone. I I just have, it's probably a stupid question, but I didn't, my husband was working in the background and it was hard to hear you. Did you say your software or your source code was stolen?
No, not stolen. They made they said it was a third party company that had a government contract. And so I told them I was not selling the source code, but then they said our contract requires us to buy your source code. I said, it has to be my source code? And it said, yes, your source code. So I changed my mind. And then I suddenly said, oh, but it says one thing, you can't write human body tutorials with it. I said, why not? I said, because I don't have the rights to those. Those are owned by this other company that contracted the source code in the first place, that contracted me to write the program in the first place. They said, oh, well, we'll get back to you. So about 2 weeks later, they got back to me with a lawyer from New York, a New York lawyer, and said, that's an illegal contract and you don't have to abide by it. I said, fine, get me a signed thing from the other company saying that they're releasing me, and then I'll give you the source code. A couple of weeks later, sure enough, that document arrived and I gave them the source code. And that was it. I did get paid. It was not a whole lot of money.
Good, good. Also, I also couldn't really hear. Did Dave say that you changed your name?
After the incident, the driving incident in San Marcos, California, when I realized that the person that had attempted to commit suicide because he was despondent and about to resign from Congress was America's last ace, and I had outsmarted him, so I took the name Ace. And before I did it, I asked my dad, who
this was your first name that you changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was originally Russell, and a middle name David. But I asked my dad, who had fought in World War II, in the if you know the story of Bastogne, where the guy replied nuts to a request to surrender. My dad was in the companies that relieved him. It got to Bastogne. And if you know about a place called Malmedy, where I think it's 84 U.S. soldiers were murdered by the SS, it was my dad's company that came upon those soldiers. So if he says I can take the name Ace, when I described what happened, he said, yeah, that's war.
So you legally changed it.
Yeah. Well, because I couldn't get any legal action on, I knew who did it, and I complained to the judge and everything. And the judge did do one unusual thing, which is they usually give you 30 days to clean up your affairs. The judge paused the trial for 30 days for nobody knew why, and everybody's wondering why. And then when the trial came, he didn't give him no 30 days again. He threw him right into jail, which surprised him.
Okay, let's get back on topic. And Dave, you have a question. You have your hand raised.
Yeah. Ace, the beauty of Night with the Experts is we get people literally from all over the world sometimes. We frequently get folks from Canada, all over the United States who attend these. And I was hoping you might be able to shed a little light for people on the current situation with out in California, out your way. What groups are you working with? What's happening with San Onofre? Just a little bit of background so folks understand what's going on out there.
Yeah, California has two different problems. One is a reactor that they want to keep open that should have been shut down, the Diablo Canyon. And the other one is 3-point-something million pounds of spent fuel waste right close to the shore in one of the most populated areas in America, 15 miles from my house. And so there's a lot of problems, because if we succeed in solving the waste problem a little bit, the entire industry is going to say, see, what are you so worried about? So I'm not real comfortable with simply helping to solve the one problem for San Onofre, my local place, when we still have a reactor that we are desperately trying to get closed. 300 miles north of me, and that's north, close enough to be a threat to me too. And so I think closing Diablo Canyon is the far more important issue than trying to get the waste moved. But on the other hand, that incident with San Marcos with the suicidal driver, there's a similar incident. It's in Germanwings airplane where the pilot crashed into a mountain and killed, I think it's 159 people. The Air India this summer may have been a suicidal crash, although I personally think it was just a boneheaded move by the pilot to accidentally shut off the engines and move. They do routinely. My point is, of course, that every ISFC is at risk. Not just the reactors at risk of an airplane crashing into them, like I said, happened to, I was going to say at 9/11, but every spent fuel ISFC is at risk. And I think the reason that San Onofre is built low like that is partly to protect, to claim to protect against that kind of thing. And I think it does absolutely no good, because spent fuel from a plane crash would fill the voids and burn until who knows what blows up. So spent fuel is a horrible risk at San Onofre, and at Diablo Canyon they want to just keep making more spent fuel. And the really sad thing is that both sites have these huge switch yards that are ready for offshore wind, and all we need is permission to do that. And we can't get that because, for one thing, the current administration is totally against wind. And then the other problem is that the two energy companies, San Diego Gas and Electric and PG&E, they don't make the same kind of money from offshore wind. They would still be a switch yard, and they'd still make a lot of money, and they'd still deliver, but they wouldn't be producing the electricity, which is where they can make a lot of money when they don't have to pay for the waste and they don't have to pay for insurance properly. So they want to get the thing started, and they really want to have those licenses when small modular reactors, if they still have licenses for small modular reactor, when smaller modular reactors come along, they're going to want to use those two sites for those. And then they're making the energy and they're making the money. So they won't let them use wind. That's the situation in California. It's a mess.
And if I could have a quick follow-up on that.
Yeah.
As a Californian, would you be willing to share an opinion on Governor Gavin Newsom and how he is handling the energy situation out there?
Yeah, I don't think he's handling the energy situation very well. The political situation is a whole other story. So at the moment, I don't want to say anything bad about Gavin Newsom, but yeah, he was in charge of a committee a long time ago, 10 or 15 years ago, and we had won the day. It seemed so obvious we had won the day. All the speakers, like, for and against, and he decided against us, and I was blown away because he really sounded like he was going to, all throughout the day, he seemed like he understood what we were complaining about and everything. So I don't know if somebody got to him or what, but Gavin Newsom is certainly the thing that's causing us to have Diablo Canyon open right now. It's a shame.
Thanks. Back to you, Bob.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Ace. David Uriori, you're up next. You have a question in the chat, but go ahead and enunciate it for us all.
Sure. So I've actually got two questions. Let me start with the second one. Ace, you said that you lived in the San Diego area. And that means that you're paying extra electricity from the San Onofre shutdown. Do you know how much of that you're paying extra for your electricity based on the cost to shut San Onofre down, and how much of it is related to having to buy on the spot market for the electricity that San Onofre is not supplying?
I don't handle the bills in my house, so I have no idea.
I do not know the answer
She
to
doesn't know the answer to it either.
what is
All right.
expected.
All
Sorry.
right. The other thing I wanted to say is it's more a statement than a question,
Mhm.
and that is AI runs at a data center. So it's not running locally. And right now, nuclear power plants, if they lose access to electrical power, they they have problems. So adding AI would be adding another layer of complexity to this problem in that if they lose access to the link to the data center, um, they now have nobody controlling the nuclear power plant or nothing controlling the nuclear power plant. And so I think that that's worth looking at and uh, paying attention to.
Yeah, the Cloudflare, is it Cloudflare? Is that the name of the company outage that caused Twitter and several other places to go down yesterday? Um, those things
Yeah.
are going to keep happening. And I'm, I was reading an article that I had written, not an article, an essay I'd written in 2010 against AI because they're computerizing the control rooms, and I
Mhm.
find that to be particularly uh, not a good idea.
Yeah. So there are ways that you can move parts of the AI solution to the control room itself. But if you lose power at the control room, you're just completely, uh, you've just completely lost control of the plant. And not only that, but the connection between the plant and the data center can be hacked and manipulated by unfavorable actors that could cause the system to malfunction, the AI system to malfunction or be problematic. And so it doesn't seem to me like there's a way to ensure safety when your control is remote, and there are all these different ways that you can lose the access to that control mechanism or have it defeated.
Yeah, there's probably ways to get into a nuclear power plant uh, right now too, though.
Yeah,
So
but
it just adds another layer of
yeah,
problems.
it adds another layer that's probably a lot more visible and a lot more. You wouldn't have to just protect the nuclear power plant. You'd have to detect an entire data center with thousands of machines and access from every single power plant around, conceivably. So something like 500 different access points you'd have to protect, and it would be it's a much more challenging situation. So when somebody says, "Oh yeah, we'll just have AI do it," and AI doesn't make mistakes, that's not that's not solving the problem at all. So
AI probably really would prefer to have smooth power that's on all the time too, because a lot of what AI does builds on everything else that it does and stores it all in memory. So
yeah,
it really wants reliable power. And no matter how often nuclear plants or nuclear advocates tell us it's reliable, it really isn't. It shuts down periodically, and when it does, it takes down a whole lot of stuff.
yeah,
That's a
and
different
you.
kind of unreliability, but
So do you mind if I go on with this discussion? I know other people have questions and stuff, but I wanted to also state that the way AI learns, it can only learn from situations that have has seen in the past. And so novel situations that occur at a power plant, it's true that you could teach it novel situations that have never occurred, but if you miss one that occurs, AI is going to have a very difficult time reacting to that situation. So there are a whole bunch of issues along those lines of you're never going to know if you've got a complete data set as far as teaching AI. You're never going to know if you've given that AI system the correct order of data so that it learns it the way you want it to. Um, and or so that it does things the way you expect them to. And you can overcome a lot of that by testing, but if you don't know all the failure conditions that you can run into, then your testing is incomplete, and so you still have these problems.
Well, it sounds like we've got some trial and error to work with with the computers. Clearly, I mean, they've got the backup generators. The power goes down immediately, but I would surely hope that they would have Homer Simpson ready to move if they lost their internet connection, to jump to the controls and make sure everything was held out smooth.
Well, that's true, but it's worth pointing out that, you've got a problem if your power plant loses an outside energy source. You've also got a problem now if your data center loses an outside energy source or gets hacked or an internet connection breaks or the whole sorts of things that bring down large websites on a probably annual basis. Any given large website is going to go down because of one of these factors.
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be a big issue. We'll have to see. Hopefully not by trial and error, but I want to move it on to let Kathy Barnes get a chance to talk here. You
Yep.
can unmute and jump in there.
Hi. Yeah, I heard that the United States is buying plutonium from Russia. I wondered if that is true, and if it is true, how can we stop that? Because it's really helping Russia in their war effort.
Yeah, I think we're buying actual fuel assemblies. I don't know if we're buying plutonium specifically, but we are buying fuel assemblies from Russia, which blows my mind, and I don't know how how that managed to escape sanctions, other than that we're not doing. We don't. I think we're making something like 20% of our own uh, reactor supply domestically. So we had no choice, as in either we'd have to shut the reactors down or run them at lower power, which would be very not cost effective, or buy fuel from Russia. So, you know, we're buying fuel from
And
Russia.
yeah, we should shut them down, I think, eh?
Oh, yes, I think we should.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'd be nearly as long before there's no more rolling blackouts or anything like that if we just planned it. I mean, we could have certainly replaced Diablo Canyon and San Onofre's power with offshore wind in a matter of a couple of years. And San Onofre's been closed for what, 12, 13 years? We could so easily have replaced it
Mhm.
with wind power. And now we have 3, 4, and 5 megawatt wind turbines available. And more.
Where I live, there was a big resistance to wind because DTE wanted to put them so close to people's homes that people would be living in evacuation zones, basically. I think they were trying to run everybody out. So there was a big resistance to them, but there are a lot of solar farms that are going up. And even in Michigan, the solar is working really well. And the Amish community has solar. Uh, they use it to for batteries for their power tools, and they also power their buggy lights with it. And when they have businesses, they use solar for electricity, for the lights in their stores and stuff. So, and that's the Amish are horse and buggy. They're basically living, in the 1800s and earlier. But they have adapted solar. I think their main thing against electricity was the companies, the companies that had it and stuff. Um, I just wanted to say something interesting. I watched an old Star Trek, uh, you know, movie. It was one of the TV shows, and in it they had where they brought this machine on board, which was artificial intelligence, which was geared to replace the people and was geared to run the ship. And what was happening was it would preempt all of these directives before people had a chance to even say anything. It was doing everything. So it was working really well. But when it came to where it felt it was threatened, it was taking over and basically was killing off life support systems for humans and stuff. And I think that's one of the problems with AI is that it might work so well that it could just like disable human capabilities. Like when I was watching that old show, which is pretty amazing that they thought of that back in the 60s. I was thinking, what if that was a nuclear power plant instead of the Enterprise? The AI was taking over nuclear power plant. Oh my gosh, But I think that could happen, you know, where it would preempt human decisions and, you know, be a disaster.
It doesn't actually think, so it would just be another hallucination on its part. I would assume.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if we can contact Congress or what, but they really do need to stop helping Russia in any way and to stop fuel assemblies or plutonium or whatever the heck they're buying from them. We need to stop it. So maybe that's something we could all try to do. Do you think? Or,
Okay,
I certainly
thank you.
hope so.
Thank you, Kathy.
thank you.
Um, Michael Lee, you had a comment. Did you want to speak to the audience?
Oh, I just threw that in because I thought some people who haven't been keeping up on cyber terrorism might not have known the reference of the Anthropic hacking. So I just put in some information.
I'm sorry, Michelle, not
That's
Michael.
okay.
Well, yeah, the future of AI it's pretty scary when you really think, are we going to all be without jobs and it's going to be doing everything? Hopefully, if that's the case, it could give us a nice living salary to do art and whatever else. But it seems like a world that won't really happen. But so, anybody else want to weigh in?
I wanted to, I guess you can't hear me. Let me try this. Just a minute. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Jen. Yeah, I didn't see your
Yeah,
hand
we can.
raised.
You can
We
hear
can.
me?
Good enough.
Yeah, just
Oh,
speak loudly.
okay. What I wanted was for Michelle to read her comment and explain it better. If you don't mind, Michelle. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So basically this in mid-September, Anthropic identified some suspicious activity. It did an investigation, and about 10 days later, it discovered that Chinese state-sponsored hackers, China's very sophisticated hacking groups, had exploited. So this is where it sort of jumped into a whole new terrain. AI and computers have been exploited before for cyber attacks, but this is the first time that the threat actors essentially used one of AI, the Anthropic agents, to figure out how to do the attack. So the software was deployed to just, first of all, go through and identify, I guess, probably millions of or billions of people. And it was definitely targeted at government and corporations. They never identified which government officials or corporations were successfully intruded into. But so they identified individuals that would be amenable to a essentially phishing a kind of attack, which is where you send out emails or whatever, and then used information about those people to create and to AI create a successful intrusion. They haven't really said very much more. We don't know the extent of it. We don't know, what kinds of systems were infiltrated. But no, with respect to the control of industrial systems, those have been successfully hacked. I mean, the United States and Israel did that to, without the malicious intent to cause a catastrophe, but with this deliberate attempt to take control of the control systems, back in the Stuxnet attack for its for the enrichment activities which set back the Iranian nuclear program. So this is really, this is unbelievably terrifying. I would add that I played the computer in my 7th grade play. They had a Star Trek play, and I was the computer. So I know all about this stuff from the inside.
And I have to mention that the contract that I had was secret, okay? But it wasn't like we signed any big secret and it was top secret or anything like that. And I did keep it secret for about 35 years and then decided, oh, screw it, I'm talking about it. So, I didn't even tell my family.
Well, and I will say that the security is a real issue. Having worked at the utility here in Springfield, electric utility, we would get all kinds of very sophisticated phishing sort of emails and contacts from various energy supply companies and such that really wasn't. And so my password was constantly having to be changed, and I could never really remember things well enough. So it made me a little nervous. I don't want to be that guy that it leaked through on. And in our hospitals here in Springfield, we had them hacked, and they couldn't do patient records and everything. It really jammed things up, and for ransom stuff. So it's pretty crazy. That, I think, to me, is the biggest concern about nuclear power and AI connection. So thank you, Michelle. Catherine Chudy, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and let us.
I do. Thank you, Ace, for being here and your stories and your background. We're hearing a lot about, or some about fusion now, and you talked about tritium earlier, and I'm learning more about tritium as it relates to fusion and the risks. And so I'm interested in your thoughts about that. The Sierra Club has a policy that they're looking at potentially changing, and they have a task force to do that. And there are some, I'm just curious about what your thoughts are. I live out in the state of Washington, and there is a company that just announced that they will be in 2 years. They're a startup. It's called Helion, a fusion startup. So we're kind of hearing that this is moving forward, and as always, it's just around the corner. But I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
It's still just 40 years around the corner, I would assume. They haven't been able to get it to work. It creates an enormous amount of irradiated machinery parts surrounding the reaction. So it's not going to solve any of the problems that they think it's going to solve. And of course, we have a really good fusion reactor, which is reliable and has never shut down. It's 93 million miles away, but it works. So I don't see a future for fusion at all. And my wife handed me a note that I apparently said San Diego Gas and Electric when I should have said Southern California Edison earlier. Just thought I'd mention it. Next question, Jan, I guess you're next.
I'm just hoping that I can be heard. I wanted to mention that Catherine Chudy, who just spoke from Washington, is going to be our next expert in January with her partner, and I hope she will remind us of his name, because they have a program that we are going to take advantage of, and they're experts on what is happening in nuclear power in the far Pacific Northwest and at Hanford, I do believe. And so, Catherine, please tell us the name of your partner. But before that, I have to question, am I being heard well enough for me to make a comment? Okay. What I wanted to say is something that should have been clear to me a long time ago. Because when I was in college in 1958, DNA was the latest thing. I was majoring in biology, and DNA was a really big thing, during the late 50s. And the atom bomb was dropped 10 years before that, when people did not really understand what DNA was and how radiation affects the human body. I really kind of wish that Mary Olson or Cindy Folkers were here because they are experts on the tritium chain that Ace described. And I wanted to, what Ace described is going to affect epigenetics, maybe not the DNA itself. And epigenetics is even a more recent science than the DNA genetics that has made us understand after the fact how much radiation affects us. So I wanted to bring that up, even though I should have been fully aware of it. I wasn't. That DNA, the science of DNA was discovered after we began irradiating people all over God knows where. So, I would like Catherine to tell us the name of her partner and maybe a little bit about the program next week. And then, as long as it's okay, I don't know whether it is or not, but I'm going to do it. This book called Atomic Thunder is by Elizabeth Tynan, who will be our expert in February. So I'm just giving a preview for January, which will be Catherine and her partner, and Elizabeth Tynan, who will be our expert in February. And I hope that this comment was not out of order.
Sure. My partner is Lloyd Marbett, and we're with the Oregon Conservancy Foundation. We are in the Pacific Northwest, where we've been involved in protecting the moratorium that's been in place for 45 years, keeping Oregon nuclear free. And we're also addressing the massive nuclear expansion in the state of Washington with a small modular nuclear reactor project located at Hanford. So there are a lot of issues out here, and we have a resource guide that we operate with that includes the subjects of nuclear power, and also recently added AI and data centers. Oregon has the second most data centers in the country, second only to Virginia. So a lot of the electricity and water issues that we're experiencing out here are going to be affected by this application of nuclear and connection with data centers. And we're attempting to intervene in both states. So our PowerPoint presentation is nuclear power unaffordable at any size, and we'll be glad to be here in January.
It's unaffordable at full scale. I don't see how they could think it's going to be affordable at these smaller scales.
Correct.
Not going to happen. But my wife and I did a little blurb on fusion reactors. If you give me your email address, I can send it.
Thank you. I will.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
I wanted to mention one more thing that happened to me that's of interest and related to everything. And that said, I got invited to speak to the National Academy of Sciences, to grant recipients of the National Academy of Sciences. And I've only done maybe 3 or 4 talks this long in my life. So I hope you'll indulge me and forgive me for all the silliness and irrelevant things. But I asked the guy, I said, you mean grant educational software grant recipients? He said, no, all grant recipients. This was in like Washington, D.C. And who was one of those grant recipients? Well, I'm pretty sure it was EG&G, the guys that make the nuclear triggers. That's all.
Okay, well, we do have a couple more comments. First of all, we've got a telephone that wants to talk to us. Could number
Hi.
773.
Yeah. Hi,
It's
Jake here.
Jake.
And I'm sorry I got into the meeting a little bit late because of technical difficulties. Anyway, thank you for your talk. So, what would happen? What would happen if you have a computer where the control system is run by artificial intelligence and someone either hacks into it or somehow shuts down the artificial intelligence system? What would happen? What would happen? What kind of scenario can you see from that?
Yeah, well, we don't know, but we would hope that it would immediately drop the control rods. But who knows? That would be the operation of last resort. I don't see. I really hope they don't try to add AI to nuclear controls until they've proven that it works in cars and manufacturing and other places where there is less danger. And we really, I'd like to go at least another 10 or 20 years before we even think about putting it in nuclear power plants. By then, we should be smart enough to get rid of the nuclear power plants. So the whole idea is just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so are we turning over the whole responsibility to this thing, to this computerized system? That's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it runs into somebody, there's no one to blame. You don't know who to blame. The programmer. As a programmer, we don't want the blame.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We'll probably
we're not smart enough to run it ourselves, so let's turn it over to the computers because they have more expertise than we do.
Okay, well, thank you. We have another hand here from Bart Ziegler. You can go ahead and unmute.
Thanks a lot for your talk. It's always exceptional to hear such volume of information. Speaking of volume of information, I confess, I don't write good. So oftentimes I put a letter or I put my letters through chat or Claude. And also I find it interesting stuff that I've, asked some stupid questions and it comes up with some extraordinary answers. What was particularly surprising was there's a guy named Digby McDonald who wrote a report as to the precarious embrittlement of the pressure vessel at Diablo Canyon, California's last surviving nuclear power plant, putting out electrons. And it was just interesting to know that came out of AI chat. And I'm wondering if another avenue of attack might be to feed AI chat all the information we know so that it at least comes out with correct information so people understand that small modular nuclear reactors are not an efficient answer to producing electrons. I don't know what the question is, but can you help me with that, Ace?
Only to the extent that I have not tried to block AI from reading my blog, which has almost 500 essays plus another couple of hundred at my website, my company website, which is animatedsoftware.com. I don't know if it's going to help because we're overwhelmed by, pro-nuclear viewpoints and AI bots that are presenting their viewpoints and so forth. But yeah, hopefully getting the right information into the AI systems will help. And I see a question in the chat from Laura Johnson, so I will answer it to the best of my ability. some greenhouse gases are released, and that's about all I can really say. Is most of the problem with the gases that are released is that they're radioactive. So I can't really say any more on that. Sorry. Anything else? Oh, Sharon's handing me another note. Pro-nuke circular, not my topic. I'm not sure what that note means, but it does remind me that a very interesting thing happened at the Diablo Canyon meeting last. They kept saying at the beginning, as they say at every meeting, that's not the NRC. We can't talk about safety. That's the purview of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We can't do anything about safety. So they make that statement. Then throughout the meeting, they keep talking about the earthquake issues around Diablo Canyon. There's a lot of faults there. And they said that they submitted their analysis, and they're really unsure about this, that, and the other thing, but they submitted it anyway to the NRC, and the NRC approved it. Well, then who's doing the safety analysis? So is it California or is it the NRC? Because California submitted what they think the NRC is going to approve, and the NRC approved it because California says it looks safe to us. And really, when California told us about it, those people said, we can't be sure about this, that, and the other thing. So this whole your local government agency trying to skirt issues by saying that they can't handle safety. You should find ways around that. There's always going to be ways around it. These guys were going around it by simply doing the safety analysis and then saying it was the NRC that was making the decision. We can get around it in other ways too. So, one time I was actually told to stop talking because I used the word safety. This was many years ago when we had to swear that we would tell the truth. And they actually said, stop. I just stopped. And then someone from the ACLU got up and complained that they should not stop me, which was nice to hear, but still.
Okay. Can Jan, you got another question there? And so does Michelle.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Lori about emissions because a lady who's been coming to these meetings called Kristen Schrader Frechette. She's an older person, and she wrote a paper in 2016 that explained the 13 stations of the nuclear fuel chain. And each one of those emits greenhouse gases, except the one that emits the fewest greenhouse gases is the actual reactor. But there's greenhouse gases emitted in mining, milling, chemical transfer of the fuel to HF6, and then the enrichment of the fuel, and then the chemical back transfer to yellow cake that is used to fabricate the fuel, and the fuel is fabricated, then it is placed in a big old thing, and a fuel rod. I don't mean to be so silly, but and then after that, dealing with the waste emits a lot of pollution and contamination into the atmosphere, and it's the atmosphere, the soil, and the water that get the contamination. I just wanted to bring that up because when we talk about emission of greenhouse gases, we have to include the whole fuel chain, which is a whole other story than what is emitted at the site of the um, reactor vessel.
Thank you, Jan. Michelle, you have another comment.
Yeah, just something I think anybody who's sort of quasi new to this should be aware of. The NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, is pretty much being dismantled right now. It's there. I think most of us have been involved in this for way too long. Have perceived the agency as being very much captured by the industry. In fact, I really came into this area because of whistleblowers, and as an attorney, I was able to, provide them protection for confidentiality and, bring them to public officials and so forth. But so as bad as problem riddled as the NRC has been for decades, there were a lot of people in the agency, particularly at the mid levels and in the inspector level, that really, were excellent engineers and truly laboring to push back against the political wing, which was usually the commissioners. What's very alarming right now is first of all, you had mission of the NRC altered at the very end, in December 2024, or it's 23, I'm losing track of time, under the Biden administration since its inception in the 1970s, the NRC, which was split out of the Atomic Energy Commission, the NRC was created out of the AEC because the Atomic Energy Commission was considered too beholden to the industry, so they wanted to split it up into the Department of Energy, which would be in charge of promoting nuclear and worrying about the waste and military things, and the NRC, which was supposed to have the mission to protect public health and safety and the environment. Now they've added in to essentially promote the industry. So you have an internal and conflicting mission. Fast forward to the Trump administration, not only do you have a series of executive orders, both directly on nuclear and elsewhere, that are basically just accelerate this thing, go forward. You've had, I think, almost 200 people either terminated or who've quit the NRC. There was unprecedented termination of an NRC commissioner before the end of their term. Another commissioner just left on their own accord. At hearings a couple of months ago, but the first hearing of the NRC in years by the Senate, two of the new commissioners basically acknowledged that they, could be fired if they, went against the desires of the new administration. And also, just for background, you have whistleblower protections of the federal agencies across the board in the process of being, essentially eradicated. You have it's going to be the loss of union protection against retaliation. So you have all these things in the backdrop, even beyond the specific problems with the NRC being neutered, but among the whole federal apparatus. And that would be bad enough if you didn't have preemption, which then blocks any state agency actors from pushing back on safety or in the environment. So you basically don't have a regulation now that's, other than God knows what we're going to get. Sorry for going on, but it's a problem.
Sounds like you should have a night with the experts for yourself. Thank you. So how are we? Do we
I
have
think
any
we're
other
about
questions?
at time, Bob.
Yep, looks like it. All right. Well,
Could I make one more comment?
Oh, Jan, I'm sorry. I can't see your hand because it's in a very light background and it just does not show up.
I'll just make it really, really short. Palisades in Michigan was the most embrittled reactor in the United States, according to the NRC. And it was closed down about 2 years ago. And it is now scheduled to open up again. They're going to we call it the zombie reactor. It's going to be undead starting next week, I do believe. And after Palisades closed, Diablo Canyon became #1 for embrittlement.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. David, I'm going to let you close us out, right?
Yes, indeed. We're up just about at time. Ace, I want to thank you not just for being our guest tonight, but for 50 years of advocacy and work on this issue. You know, many of us on this call tonight understand what that means because we've been through a portion of that ourselves. But there are a number of new folks who are on the call tonight who are perhaps getting a bit of an education as to how deep this is and how long people have been struggling to give us a nuclear-free world, if possible. So thank you for joining us and helping and sharing your experiences tonight, Ace.
Sure. And I assure everyone I didn't name drop nearly as many people as I could.
Okay. I'll remind people tonight's session was taped and it will be up on our NEIS YouTube page probably within a week or so. So if you missed anything tonight, you'll be able to go back and hear it. As Jan Boudart mentioned, the next two Night with the Experts will be in January and February of next year. And I'm pretty sure we actually have the March guest lined up as well. Dr. Mariah Gomez from University of New Mexico will be speaking with us about nuclear colonialism, which is worldwide. And she'll be coming from that perspective of dealing with many of the indigenous peoples out in New Mexico. So I had mentioned at the top of the broadcast that we're going to be changing things up a little bit next year. We're looking to do a short series of broadcasts where the themes will be linked. And some of the major topics we are going to take a look at, some were touched on tonight, is the connection between AI and nuclear. The environmental justice aspects of nuclear is going to be looked at in 2 or 3 sessions. And certainly the issue of nuclear power not being a climate solution will be another that we'll take a look at in 2026. So I would invite you all to watch your emails for the announcements for these events and encourage you to bring other people on board. All you got to do is share the link so that people can register and they'll be able to join us at these events on the last Thursday of each month. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ace, for presenting. Want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it. And if not, just be thankful anyway, because there are things to be thankful for. Have a good holiday season, whichever of the 4 or 5 in December you choose to celebrate. And we'll connect with you guys again come January. So
Thank you, everybody.
have a good night. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.